Welcome to the OSHA Hazard Communication Training. In this training, we will cover essential information to help you safely handle hazardous chemicals in the workplace. The purpose of OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard is to ensure that employees are informed about the chemicals they work with, the hazards they may pose, and how to protect themselves. We will explore key topics such as the identification of chemicals, understanding the hazards associated with them, and the importance of safety data sheets and labels. You'll also learn how to evaluate and implement control measures to reduce exposure and protect your health and safety on the job. By the end of this training, you'll understand the importance of hazard communication and be equipped with the knowledge to make informed decisions when handling hazardous substances. Remember, safety is a shared responsibility, and knowing how to work with chemicals safely is a critical part of keeping yourself and your coworkers safe. Let's get started. In this training, we'll explore the important aspects of hazard communication and the Globally Harmonized System as it pertains to workplace safety. Our key objectives for today include understanding the purpose of the Hazard Communication Standard, HCS, and why it's critical to employee safety. Getting familiar with the Globally Harmonized System, GHS, an internationally recognized framework that ensures consistency in labeling and safety data sheets for hazardous chemicals. Reviewing the OSHA standard related to hazard communication and how it aligns with GHS to protect workers. Identifying the goals of this system, namely to improve communication of chemical hazards in the workplace, promote better health outcomes, and reduce incidents related to chemical exposure. By the end of this session, you'll have a clear understanding of how the hazard communication regulation is essential in creating safer work environments. The OSHA Hazard Communication Standard, or HCS, has undergone several important revisions since its initial adoption in 1983, evolving to ensure broader protection for workers exposed to hazardous chemicals. This slide summarizes key milestones in the development of this standard. The original standard was adopted in 1983 and introduced the concept of worker right to know. This meant that workers had the right to be informed about the chemical hazards they might encounter on the job. Its scope was initially limited, focusing primarily on the manufacturing sector and addressing only a narrow range of hazardous chemicals. This early version of the standard laid the foundation for chemical safety and worker awareness, but its protections were not as comprehensive as they needed to be. In 1987, OSHA expanded the scope of the standard to cover all industries where workers might be exposed to hazardous chemicals, not just manufacturing. This change significantly broadened protection, extending the right-to-know provisions to millions of additional workers in industries like construction, agriculture, healthcare, and services. In 2012, OSHA made a major revision to the HCS by aligning the standard with the Globally Harmonized System of Classification and Labeling of Chemicals, or GHS. This revision introduced key changes, including standardized labeling and a new 16-section format for safety data sheets. These changes aim to improve global consistency and help workers better understand chemical hazards, regardless of where they were located or what sector they worked in. By 2016, OSHA required full compliance with the GHS standards. This meant that all employers were obligated to implement GHS-compliant labels and SDS for all hazardous chemicals, and ensure that workers were properly trained on the new labeling system and how to interpret the SDS format. These updates were critical in ensuring that international and domestic chemical safety standards were aligned. In 2024, while the core requirements of the Hazard Communication Standard have remained consistent, there have been efforts to maintain compliance, with a continued focus on improving the quality of hazard communication. The OSHA Hazard Communication Standard has come a long way since its inception in 1983, transforming from a limited standard focused on manufacturing to a comprehensive system that ensures the safety and health of workers across all industries. In this slide, we'll compare two key frameworks for hazard communication: GHS and OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard. First, let's explore the Globally Harmonized System. GHS is designed to be applied internationally, creating a consistent global framework for classifying and labeling chemicals. This helps streamline international trade and improve safety standards worldwide. GHS introduces a unified system for classifying chemicals with standardized symbols, signal words, and hazard statements. This ensures that the same hazard information is communicated clearly across borders, making it easier for workers and companies around the world to understand the risks of chemicals. The goal of GHS is to enhance the safety and health of workers by providing clear, consistent hazard communication. This ensures that workers, regardless of where they are located, have access to comprehensible and actionable information about the chemicals they handle. Now, let's look at OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard, HCS. Often referred to as the Worker Right to Know Standard, HCS mandates that workers not only be informed about the hazardous chemicals they may encounter, but also understand the risks they pose. This is crucial for empowering workers to take proper precautions and protect themselves. Under HCS, employers are required to inform and train workers about the hazardous chemicals in their workplace. Employers must ensure that workers have the knowledge to handle these chemicals safely, which includes understanding the information on labels and SDSs. HCS specifically targets health and physical hazards, ensuring workers are informed about both immediate and long-term risks associated with chemicals. In summary, the Globally Harmonized System provides a standardized, internationally recognized framework for classifying and labeling chemicals, much of which OSHA adopted. OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard focuses on ensuring that workers in the United States are thoroughly informed and trained about the chemical hazards in their specific work environments. In this section, we will review the key requirements of the OSHA Hazard Communication Standard, which is designed to ensure that workers are informed about the hazards they may encounter when working with chemicals. The first requirement is labels. Labels must be clearly displayed on chemical containers and include essential information such as the product name, hazard pictograms, signal words, hazard statements, and precautionary measures. Labels provide immediate visual cues that help workers understand the risks associated with the chemicals they are handling. Next, we have safety data sheets. SDS provide detailed information about each chemical, including its properties, potential hazards, safe handling procedures, and first aid measures in case of exposure. Employers are required to maintain up-to-date SDS for every chemical used in the workplace, and they must be readily accessible to all employees. Training is another critical requirement. Employees must be trained to recognize chemical hazards, understand label and SDS information, and know the proper safety measures. Training should be provided when employees are first hired, when new chemicals are introduced, and whenever there are changes in procedures or safety protocols. Finally, a written hazard communication program is required. This written plan outlines the workplace's procedures for labeling, maintaining SDSs, providing employee training, and communicating hazards. It serves as a reference for employers and employees to ensure the program is being followed properly. These four key components, labels, SDSs, training, and a written program work together to create a comprehensive approach to hazard communication, helping to protect your health and safety while working with chemicals. GHS pictograms are graphical symbols set within a diamond-shaped border, each representing a specific type of hazard. The intent of the design is to be simple, clear, and instantly recognizable. Each image conveys the nature of a hazard quickly through a symbol. The flame pictogram identifies flammable chemicals, self-heating substances, or pyrophoric materials that can ignite easily. The skull and crossbones image indicates chemicals that are fatal or toxic if inhaled, swallowed, or absorbed. The flame over circle denotes oxidizing chemicals that can enhance combustion or react violently with other substances. The health hazard pictogram indicates chemicals that may cause long-term health effects, such as cancer, reproductive toxicity, or respiratory issues. The gas cylinder identifies gases under pressure, such as compressed, liquefied, or dissolved gases. The exclamation mark warns of chemicals that cause irritation, drowsiness, skin sensitization, or mild toxicity. The exploding bomb warns of chemicals that are explosive, self-reactive, or may cause violent reactions. The corrosion symbol signifies corrosive substances that cause skin and eye damage or corrode metals. And the environmental hazard symbol warns of chemicals that pose a risk to aquatic environments. By using a set of simple graphical symbols, GHS ensures that workers can quickly identify potential risks associated with chemicals and take appropriate precautions to protect their health, safety, and the environment. In this slide, we'll break down the key elements of a GHS label, which provides standardized hazard information to help workers understand the risks associated with chemicals. GHS labels are designed to be clear, concise, and consistent, ensuring that hazard communication is effective. The product name is the chemical's unique identifier. This allows workers to clearly locate the chemical in question. The signal word indicates the severity of the hazard. It is either danger, which is used for more severe hazards, or warning, which is used for less severe hazards. The signal word helps workers quickly gauge the seriousness of the chemical hazard and take appropriate precautions. Pictograms are standardized symbols that visually represent the type of hazard posed by the chemical. These symbols are designed to quickly convey information about the hazards. Hazard statements describe the nature of the chemical's hazards in clear and concise language. They help workers understand the specific health and physical risks they may encounter. Precautionary statements provide safety measures that should be taken to avoid harm. They give workers clear, actionable instructions for safe handling. Manufacturer information includes the name, address, and contact details of the manufacturer or distributor of the chemical. This information may be crucial in case of an emergency. A GHS label contains essential information to help workers identify, understand, and protect themselves from chemical hazards. The key components work together to ensure that hazard communication is clear, consistent, and effective. The purpose of a safety data sheet, commonly referred to as an SDS, is to provide detailed information about a chemical substance or mixture, including its hazards, handling instructions, storage requirements, and emergency response measures. The SDS is structured into 16 standard sections as defined by GHS and implemented in the U.S. by OSHA under the Hazard Communication Standard. The SDS serves as a comprehensive document that provides necessary information about a chemical to ensure safe handling, emergency response, and compliance with regulatory requirements. The 16 sections ensure that SDSs are consistent, easy to read, and cover all necessary safety and hazard information for workers and emergency responders. The identification section is the first part of a safety data sheet and serves as the foundation for understanding a chemical product. This section provides essential details to identify the substance and its purpose, ensuring workers and responders know what they are dealing with. Key components include product identifier, manufacturer or supplier information, recommended use and restrictions, and emergency contact information. This section ensures that anyone handling or exposed to the chemical can quickly identify it, understand its basic purpose, and know who to contact in an emergency. Always refer to the SDS identification section before using a chemical to confirm you are working with the correct product. The hazard identification section of the safety data sheet provides critical information about the chemical's potential hazards. This section is essential for understanding the risks associated with a substance and for determining appropriate safety measures. Key elements include classification of the substance or mixture, GHS label elements, precautionary statements, and other hazards not otherwise classified. This section ensures that workers can quickly recognize and understand the hazards of a chemical. Always review this part of the SDS to determine the appropriate safety measures before handling any hazardous substance. The composition section of the safety data sheet provides detailed information about the ingredients in a chemical product. This section is vital for understanding the substance's makeup and for assessing potential health and safety risks. Key components include substance or mixture information, chemical name and CAS number, concentration ranges, and impurities or stabilizers. Workers can use this information to identify hazards, select PPE, and prepare for spills or other emergencies. Always refer to the composition section to know exactly what you're handling and ensure all safety measures are in place. Beyond identification, hazard identification, and composition, the safety data sheet includes additional sections to provide a comprehensive understanding of chemical safety. Each section plays a critical role in ensuring safe handling, storage, and disposal of hazardous substances. Always review the full SDS for complete safety details. This slide outlines key requirements of the OSHA Hazard Communication Standard. Let's take a few moments to go over each one in detail. The purpose of the standard is to ensure that workers are informed about the chemical hazards they may encounter in the workplace. The scope section applies to any workplace where hazardous chemicals are used, handled, or stored, including general industry, construction, maritime, and agriculture, and is intended to protect employees from chemical hazards. The definitions subpart provides specific definitions for terms used within the standard. Example terms include hazardous chemical, label, and safety data sheet. Hazard classification is the systematic process of evaluating a chemical or mixture and determining specific hazards associated with it, based on its physical, health, and environmental properties. Employee training and information mandates training for employees on the hazards of chemicals they may be exposed to and safe handling practices. The Written Hazard Communication Program section requires employers to develop and implement a written program to inform employees about hazardous chemicals in the workplace. The Labeling Requirements subpart specifies the requirements for labeling hazardous chemicals, including the use of GHS pictograms, signal words, and hazard statements. It requires proper labeling of all containers of hazardous chemicals, including those transferred to secondary containers. The Safety Data Sheet subpart details the requirements for SDS, including the format and 16-section content that must be provided for hazardous chemicals. In conclusion, the OSHA Hazard Communication Standard ensures a comprehensive approach to workplace safety by requiring clear communication, proper training, and systematic labeling and classification of hazardous chemicals, ultimately protecting employees from potential chemical hazards. Let's discuss health and physical hazards as defined by GHS and the OSHA Hazard Communication Standard. Health hazards focus on long-term and acute health risks, while physical hazards deal with the immediate dangers posed by a chemical's physical properties. Health hazards refer to chemicals that can cause adverse effects on health when individuals are exposed to them through inhalation, skin contact, ingestion, or absorption. These hazards include both acute effects, such as poisoning or irritation, and chronic effects, like long-term diseases or conditions that develop after prolonged or repeated exposure. Examples of health hazards include carcinogens, respiratory sensitizers, which can lead to asthma or breathing issues, and reproductive toxins. The GHS classifies these hazards with pictograms such as the skull and crossbones for acute toxicity, and the health hazard symbol for substances that can cause serious health effects like cancer, respiratory issues, or organ toxicity. Physical hazards are chemicals that present dangers due to their physical properties and can result in dangerous reactions or accidents under certain conditions. These hazards include substances that are flammable, explosive, or oxidizing. For example, flammable liquids can catch fire easily and pose a significant risk in environments where heat or sparks are present, while explosive materials may detonate when exposed to heat or pressure. Oxidizers can cause or enhance combustion, even in the absence of air. Other physical hazards include chemicals that are under pressure, such as gases in cylinders, which can explode if mishandled, and substances that are corrosive to metals or can cause severe damage to skin or eyes. The GHS classifies these hazards with specific symbols like the flame for flammability and the exploding bomb for explosive substances. Many chemicals pose both physical and health hazards, making them more dangerous in the workplace. For example, acetone is highly flammable, a physical hazard, and can cause irritation to the eyes and respiratory system, a health hazard. Understanding both types of risks is essential for implementing comprehensive safety measures and protecting employees effectively. Let's briefly discuss the hazards of some specific chemicals: an acid, a base, an oxidizer, and a solvent. As a strong base, sodium hydroxide can cause severe chemical burns and tissue damage upon contact with skin or eyes, and it is highly corrosive to metals. Its dust can irritate respiratory passages. While less aggressive than some other acids, phosphoric acid is still corrosive and can cause burns to the skin, eyes, and respiratory tract. It's commonly used in cleaning, but exposure can result in irritation or damage to tissues. 35% hydrogen peroxide, a highly concentrated oxidizer, can cause severe skin burns, eye damage, and respiratory issues. It is reactive and can rapidly decompose, releasing oxygen and causing an explosive hazard if improperly stored or mixed with incompatible materials. Acetone is a highly flammable solvent with a low flash point, posing a significant fire hazard. It can cause irritation to the skin, eyes, and respiratory system upon exposure and may be harmful if ingested or inhaled in large quantities. Sodium hydroxide is a strong base, whereas phosphoric acid is a relatively weaker acid. Both are corrosive but act in opposite ways, bases versus acids. Hydrogen peroxide is an oxidizer, which makes it reactive, particularly with flammable materials, while acetone is a flammable solvent, making it dangerous in the presence of open flames or sparks. Acetone and hydrogen peroxide both pose inhalation risks, while sodium hydroxide and phosphoric acid pose more direct contact hazards, like burns or irritation. Generally, chemicals such as acids, bases, oxidizers, and solvents pose risks like corrosivity, flammability, reactivity, and inhalation hazards. Proper handling, storage, and the use of personal protective equipment, PPE, are crucial to minimize these dangers. Training is a critical element of the OSHA Hazard Communication Standard. It ensures that employees handling hazardous chemicals are aware of the associated health and physical risks, know how to protect themselves, and understand how to respond in emergency situations. Employees must receive training when they are first assigned to tasks involving hazardous chemicals, ensuring they understand the risks and precautions before beginning their work. In addition, refresher training should be provided at regular intervals or whenever new chemicals are introduced into the workplace. This ensures that workers remain up to date on safety protocols, new hazards, and any changes in the work environment or chemicals being used, maintaining a safe and compliant workplace at all times. By ensuring continuous and thorough training, employers can create a safer workplace, reduce risks, and maintain compliance with OSHA regulations, ultimately protecting the health and well-being of all employees. In any workplace, effectively managing hazards is crucial to ensure the health and safety of all employees. Hazard communication involves identifying potential risks, understanding the chemicals and materials present, and implementing protective measures to minimize exposure. In this section, we will explore the steps necessary to effectively manage hazards, covering the detection of hazardous chemicals, understanding the nature of the risks, implementing appropriate protective measures, and the key details of the hazard communication program that helps guide these actions. Monitoring exposure levels in the workplace is a critical step in managing chemical hazards. This process involves measuring the concentration of hazardous substances in the air, on surfaces, or in personal breathing zones using tools like air samplers, gas detectors, or passive dosimeters. The presence of chemicals can also be detected by continuous monitoring devices, visual observations, and odor detection. In the workplace, hazardous chemicals can present a wide variety of risks, each of which requires careful understanding and management. Let's review some common hazard categories. Physical hazards include flammability, reactivity, or explosiveness. For example, acetone is a flammable liquid with a low flash point, meaning it can ignite easily if exposed to heat or sparks. Health hazards involve effects on the body, such as toxicity, irritation, or carcinogenicity. For instance, hydrochloric acid can cause severe burns upon skin contact and damage the respiratory tract when inhaled. Simple asphyxiants displace oxygen in the air, creating a suffocation risk. Nitrogen gas, though non-toxic, can cause oxygen deficiency in confined spaces if released in large amounts. Certain fine particulate materials can form explosive dust clouds. For example, grain dust, metal powders, or coal dust can ignite when dispersed in air and exposed to an ignition source, leading to powerful explosions. Pyrophoric gases ignite spontaneously upon exposure to air. Phosphine, used in pest control, is a pyrophoric gas that can create fire hazards without an external ignition source. Some chemicals may not fit standard classifications, but still pose unique dangers. For example, lithium metal reacts violently with water, creating a fire hazard, even though it is not explicitly labeled as flammable or pyrophoric. By understanding the specific hazards of chemicals in the work area, we can take targeted precautions, such as ventilation, PPE, or special handling procedures, to mitigate risks and ensure worker safety. Protecting employees from chemical hazards requires a combination of personal responsibility, employer-implemented safety measures, and proper training. Here are the key measures to ensure safety. Employers establish safe work practices to minimize exposure risks. For example, when handling flammable solvents like acetone, use only in well-ventilated areas and keep containers tightly sealed when not in use to prevent vapor buildup. When working with corrosive chemicals like hydrochloric acid, always pour acid into water when diluting to prevent splashes or violent reactions. Emergency procedures are critical for mitigating harm in case of spills or exposure. For a spill of a combustible dust, such as sugar or grain dust, immediately shut off ignition sources and avoid actions that could create a dust cloud, like sweeping. If exposed to an oxidizer like hydrogen peroxide, rinse the affected area with water and remove contaminated clothing promptly. Emergency eye wash stations and showers should be readily accessible. Using the right PPE is vital to protect against chemical hazards. For handling pyrophoric gases like phosphine, wear fire-resistant clothing, gloves, and respiratory protection. When working with acids and bases, wear chemical-resistant gloves, goggles, and face shields to prevent skin and eye contact. Employers must implement controls tailored to workplace hazards. An example of an engineering control includes installation of fume hoods or local exhaust ventilation to prevent inhalation of vapors or dust. Training programs provide regular training on hazard recognition, proper handling, and response protocols for hazardous chemicals. Labeling and signage ensure all chemical containers are clearly labeled and hazard signs are prominently displayed in high-risk areas. By following these measures, combining safe work practices, emergency response, and PPE use, employees can significantly reduce the risk of exposure to hazardous chemicals and ensure a safer work environment. An effective hazard communication program is essential to ensure employees are informed about the chemicals they work with. Let's break down the key components of the program. Employers must ensure that labels on incoming chemical containers are not removed or defaced. Employers may use their own labeling system to supplement shipped container labels. For example, color-coded labels can quickly indicate hazards. Custom labels can include simplified information such as corrosive, wear gloves for phosphoric acid. The SDS is a critical resource for detailed chemical information. Employees can access SDSs through a centralized location, such as a digital database or a binder in a designated area. Employees should use hazard information for quick hazard identification and handling instructions. An SDS can be used to prepare for safe chemical handling, understand emergency response procedures, and select the right PPE. This program ensures that all employees have the knowledge they need to safely work with hazardous chemicals and respond appropriately in case of exposure or release. Effectively managing hazards is vital to maintaining a safe and healthy work environment. By understanding how to detect chemicals, recognizing the hazards they present, implementing protective measures, and following the details of your hazard communication program, you play a key role in reducing risks and preventing accidents. Remember, safety is a shared responsibility, and the more informed and prepared we are, the safer our workplace will be. In order to work safely with chemicals, it's essential to follow a systematic approach. First, identify chemicals you may encounter in your workplace, including understanding the substances and their potential risks. Next, understand the hazards associated with these chemicals, whether they are physical, like flammability, or health related, such as toxicity. Once you're familiar with the hazards, you can evaluate control options to minimize exposure, such as engineering controls, personal protective equipment, or safer alternatives. After selecting appropriate controls, it's time to implement these measures and ensure that they are properly used. Finally, always work safely by adhering to safety guidelines, using the right equipment, and staying vigilant about potential hazards in your environment. This continuous cycle helps ensure a safe workplace for everyone. Thank you for completing this training. Address any questions regarding chemical hazards or the requirements of this program to your safety and environmental department. Remember that communication about chemical hazards is an ongoing process and not a one-time event. Stay informed, follow safety protocols, and always be proactive in protecting yourself and your colleagues from chemical risks. Safety is everyone's responsibility. Make it a priority every day.